Welcome to Magnify Your Message. Inspiration magnified.
And that's my favorite part of it. You take a chaotic mess and you get people to a place where they can manage their lives peacefully with some kind of sense of normalcy again. And it's just a beautiful thing to see.
I'm honored to introduce you to today's guest, Bree Sullivan-Howell. Bree is an attorney with over 20 years of experience, and she's a fierce advocate for survivors of domestic abuse and violence, as well as their children. Bree is a family law attorney, and she takes a very different approach to divorce. Specifically, she champions those who feel that they should not be able to get a divorce. She helps them crush their divorce. So it's a fascinating conversation, a very different look at things. And I think you're going to enjoy this episode as much as I did the conversation with Bree. Enjoy. You are going to love seeing the world through the eyes of today's guest, Bree Sullivan-Howell. Bree, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me, Cheryl. Good to see you.
What a treat. Likewise. Share with people who you are and what do you provide for people?
Well, I'm a family law attorney in South Georgia. I provide family law services primarily to my clients, men, women, children, everyone. Grandparents' rights cases, I also handle. Pretty much anything touching on anything family law related is in my wheelhouse, and I've been doing it a long time.
That's so inspiring. And how did you choose to specialize in that particular area of law?
Well, it's interesting. I did not intend to practice family law. In fact, in law school, I determined I was going to be a commercial litigator and pursue business tort law, fighting over construction projects and what I thought was just highbrow legal practice at the time. And
Eyebrow. I love that.
highbrow. And I got out and I got a really great job with a law firm and learned some great skills in litigation. And that involves courtroom work and, a lot of writing to courts and arguing on your feet, which is what I wanted to do, is be in the courtroom. And then I moved to South Georgia when my kids started coming along, where my family is. I just needed their help, if I'm being honest about it. So we came closer to them. And to be in a courtroom in South Georgia, you really have one option, and that is family law. And that is what happened. I hung my shingle, and that's what showed up at my door. That's where the demand was. And then it turned out that I loved it. So I just
Mm.
dove in.
So you dove in, you hung out your shingle, people started finding you, and it sounds like it became your real self-expression. Is there a particular facet of family law that started to fascinate you then?
Well, I think it's just helping children and family dynamics that are intriguing. And what's interesting about family law, especially divorce in particular, is that it touches on all the other areas. You're dividing property. So there's the whole body of property law. And you've also got, it touches on taxes sometimes. I'm not a tax expert, but it does get into that realm, which is interesting. You get into debtor creditor law. You get into talking about people's mortgages and how they interact with banks in their divorces and afterward, and how you get out of obligations in your divorce and divide them properly. It's a whole puzzle. It is not just fighting over the coffee table and the bobblehead collection. It is, I mean, I've actually done that. I've divided the bobbleheads at my table. It's always an adventure too. That's the other fun thing. But it touches on so many areas of law and it's all consuming. And you're talking about someone's most important um, priorities. You're talking about their homes, you're talking about their children, the relationships they're going to have going forward, the time they're going to have with children and relatives going forward, the memories they're going to get to make or not make, depending on what your outcome is. So it's just really pivotal stuff. someone walks in your office with a divorce or a custody case and they're handing you their lives. I mean, they're handing you the trust of take care of my children. It's super important. And I just take it very seriously.
Bree, it is heartwarming to hear that. Now, heartwarming is probably not a word that people often associate with an attorney, right? There's oftentimes a listening out there for attorneys and they just want your money or some such thing. But the fact that you care this much, it's truly extraordinary. It's moving, honestly. I think going back a ways, but my parents got divorced
Mhm.
when I was 14 and my brother and sister were younger, and it was a challenging time, and none of us knew how to negotiate it or navigate it, excuse me. I don't know who was doing the negotiation or how that went down, but I don't think whoever the attorney was, if they're still alive, I don't know that it was done with the 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 thoughtfulness and care that you're doing now. Was there something about divorces that you had witnessed that made you wanna do it better?
Yeah, and that's a great question, Cheryl. I was a child of divorce too, like you. I was 8 when my parents separated, 9 when their divorce was finished. And we had divorce papers, that we worked from. My parents would say, well, what do the papers say about Christmas Eve this year? That kind
Mm.
of, so I had a working knowledge of how it worked. Um, and I knew what a divorce decree kind of looked like because they talked about it a lot. And I kind of understood the view of the child involved intuitively because I had been the child involved. And I watched as my parents went on to new marriages and as my mom tried to blend a family with her second husband and his children joining our household and what worked and what did not work. And I just had some firsthand experiences. I think we've known each other a while. I've never told you all of these things, but the firsthand experiences of it, including watching my dad be a stellar, show up, never give up dad, even though we were like 2 hours apart there for a few years. He didn't miss a single opportunity to see me. And when he did have me, he spent every minute he could enriching our relationship. And he taught me to hunt deer and play golf and shoot a basketball, and just, we have a great relationship. I mean, we always have, but today we're very close as adults because of the foundation he built when I was little. And that's given me a platform for talking with my male clients, my dad clients, to say, be like my dad. His name's Eddie. And I say, be like Steady Eddie. We want you to be like him because that's what's going to make the difference. You can parent in 2 homes and get the job done effectively and not, you know, be at each other's throats. It can be positive. It can be cooperative. And I'm living proof of that. My parents come to my home every year at Christmas together. We celebrate holidays together. They come on my birthday together sometimes. It's very pleasant. And it can be that for some people. So yeah, that's where it came from. It's just kind of this understanding as people started coming to my office, needing my guidance and my advice on these things. I drew from life experience before I had any courtroom experience in it. It's like, well, this kind of makes sense. Let's try this. And it started working out for folks and the results were good and the judges responded well to what we would present. And it was just natural for me. And I've just loved it. I've just enjoyed it so much. And I love it so much. I've written books about it now. And then I got divorced myself, and that added a whole layer of experience. And now I'm remarried again, and that's a different experience that added to the other layers. So it's just where I'm supposed to be. I just know it in my heart.
So many of the best ideas, best brands, best businesses or messages come from that hard fought, hard won experience. Sure, I'm sure it wasn't pleasant at 8 going through a divorce,
Mhm.
And yet you've turned it into such a way to serve people. I'm sure the same is probably true of your own divorce. It's not a happy event, but you've again you're paying it forward. It is so funny if somebody were to read the liner notes in advance of this episode and think, "The inspiring world of divorce. Courtesy Bree Sullivan-Howell." It might be like, wait a minute. You that words inspiration and divorce don't naturally fit together. It's like those children's programs. Which of these words doesn't belong? But you're making it that way. Look, if the statistics about divorce are what we're told they are, and you would know far better than I, it's not an if someone's life will be touched by divorce, it's a when. And it doesn't have to be us personally, but someone in our sphere. If there was if there was were as much dignity and respect and a stand for workability as you bring, it would be an entirely different world.
It can be a lot better than a lot of people handle it. So, yeah, and it is a painful thing to go through. So until I went through it myself, I didn't really understand. I had empathy for people because I had seen my parents and different friends and whoever go through it. But when it's you and you are struggling with the questions and the unknowns and the fears and the perceived wrongs that are being accomplished, or you feel like something isn't fair or something, when it's you feeling like something's unjust, you
Mm.
feel it a different way than if you're watching somebody else's story. And so that has given me such insight into what people go through. And when people go through the things that I kind of experienced, I can say, listen, I've been there. I know exactly what you're feeling right now. And let me just tell you, I am living proof you will get through it and you're going to be better and happier one day. We just got to keep walking forward. And so I tell them that, I encourage them, and I bring the scriptures to bear. And I say, this is what you need to remind yourself. This is what God says about you. This is what God says about your situation and his involvement in it. And there's a plan and that kind of thing. It just gives people a lot of hope. And I do practice from kind of a faith-based perspective. And
Now
so,
that is very different as well, to bring your faith into your law practice. When did you start doing that? Or was it something you started when you began practicing law?
yeah, day one. I mean, every firm I worked with was led by Christians. It was just who hired me. It's where I wanted to be. It was always what fit for me. And the lawyers I worked for early on that taught me everything before I worked for myself. And I've been in private practice now for probably almost 20 years, private practice, just me. But those guys and women were active about it. Like they were all involved in their churches and communities, and they were praying with their clients even, and comfortable with that. And of course, I was a young lawyer and thought, how do you do that with somebody? How do you say, can I pray for you? What do you do? That's awfully forward. So I didn't get comfortable to do that until much later. And I still don't do it often, but I do when I feel like somebody needs prayer, I'll pray with them. Um, and so now it's like inextricably intertwined with everything about me. So of course I practice with faith because I do everything else with my faith in mind. It's like who you are. So I wrote my books, and when I was working with my book coach early on, it was going to be just a guide for how to get through a divorce for a woman. And I was putting all this scripture into it. And she said to me, now, can you write this book without all this scripture? And I said, actually, no. I mean, that's kind of the whole point of the book. so and so she said, okay. And she wasn't like critiquing it or dissuading me. She was just saying, who are you? We got to put you in a category for the bookseller people. And so it turned out now I'm a Christian author. They put me in a box, but I'm happy to be there. That is what I am. And I don't care about selling 1 million copies to the masses. I just want to reach the people who need it. And Christian women have no resources going through divorces. They're struggling. Their churches a lot of times have no resources for them except to say, you really ought to stick it out. You really ought to stay. And a lot of times they're being terribly mistreated. And you wouldn't tell your best friend to stay, but you're telling this person in your church, like, stay, you got to stay. God says you have to stay. And that's just, I think, ill-advised. So I tackle some of those topics in my writing, and I'm one of the only people talking that way out there in the stratosphere. So if you like me, you like me. And if you don't, you don't, I guess. But that's just how I had to do it. So
To be fully yourself and expressed in that. So let's say a Christian woman comes to you, she's contemplating divorce, but she's been dissuaded by those in her church. What is a conversation that you might have with her?
well, I just want to know from every client who walks in the door the whole story. And it's amazing. I've got a 14-page questionnaire and I get the Cliff Notes version. I guess the new kids, the new generation call them Spark Notes. But when we were going through college, it was Cliff Notes. So I get the Cliff Note version of what their story is in that first hour. It's amazing what you can find out in an hour if you ask the right questions. But I like to know the reasons for the breakdown in the marriage. And then, if I think somebody's just not there for the right reason or they don't need to be there, I'll tell them, go back and go try some counseling. You need to do
Mm.
that first. This is knee jerk. You shouldn't be here yet. But a lot of times they're really being mistreated and there is real abuse going on. Um, and so I ask about those things and, I don't try to get in somebody's conscience with them and say what's right or wrong, or you need to do this or that in terms of making the choice. But I give them things to think about, like, are you safe? Are you physically safe? Number one, and are your children safe? And what are they seeing modeled for them in this situation? And you know, are you just ask, are you asking the right questions about this scenario? And plus, have you been abandoned? Because if the opposite spouse has already left you, you don't have a choice but to defend yourself and get ready for battle. It's time. The line has been drawn. So it's everybody's situation is different. But I let them make the decision. And once they do, either to defend themselves or to be the filing party, I just go 100% in support of that for them. Just protect them all I can.
What a gift to provide in such an uncertain time in their lives. So, okay, you've spoken about your books and you said books plural. So tell us about both of them, will you?
Yeah, well, I've got two full-length books. The first book I wrote, in air quotes, was actually more like a pamphlet. It's called Devotional for the Divorcing, and it's just some basic reassurance. You're going to be okay. Here's what you need to be thinking about, just to warm the hearts of people. And I wrote it just to hand somebody something when they walked in my office, because they come in so sad and so upset and uncertain and scared. So that's what I did that one for. And it's very short, but the first full length book was Crush Your Divorce and Keep Your Faith. And it's for the divorcing Christian woman. It's got three sections. It's the first section is Get Your Mind Right, and it's all about the things that we need to process emotionally and behaviorally to get ready for your court battle, because you need to get your mind right before you can get your ducks in a row to fight. And then
Mhm.
section 2 is about post-separation abuse and how it plays out, how you see it, how to spot it, how to defend against it, how to circumvent it and turn it around, make it manageable, especially in the court realm. And the third section is about getting ready for court and how to help your lawyer do the things. Just gives people food for thought. The other book that came out after that, both of them came out this year, is called Crush Your Comeback. And that's the fun one, all about the new day to come and how to rebuild your financial life, how to be a good co-parent, how to manage if your co-parent is not a nice parent or rather a counter parent, strategies for dealing with those things. And then I talk a little bit about my remarriage and just to give a little glimmer of hope. Every chapter has a soundtrack. I've got that on Spotify.
Oh,
So if
that's so
anybody wants to
fun.
read it and listen to the music at the same time, kind of corny, but I love music. So I found that music helps people through these situations. So I did a little list of songs.
What a fantastic idea. So, Bree, I have to ask, have you gotten any pushback from your own church or anyone else in a leadership position in a church for saying that you should not encourage or support or help people to get divorced?
I haven't because I haven't attacked any churches. I haven't attacked the faith. I think everybody struggles with what to do. Um, it's a hard topic, which is why there's no book about it except mine. No one knows what to say, and there's grace in that. So I think, yeah, nobody's pushed back. In fact, I've been partnering with Divorce Care to some degree. I talk with them and I promote their seminars that they put in churches for people going through divorces, and I've promoted their resources. I mean, I hope it can be a collaborative effort eventually. Um, I haven't put a lot of time into that yet, but I really hope to grow that relationship too, because they're fantastic people. And again, I mean, everybody is just trying to get through life, and we owe each other grace in these spaces that are difficult and just love and support. And that's what I try to do in my law practice, without throwing too many stones at people.
It it would seem that for those who are telling Christian women not to get divorced, that they might push back at you, and yet it seems as though the frictionless way that you're committed to frictionless space that you're committed to creating for people going through divorce, you're creating that same kind of a space for churches and those in faith.
Well, and if someone ever disagreed with one of my clients being divorced, that's really between them and the Lord to sort out. That's not for me to figure out. And if somebody wants to be upset with me for being the lawyer involved to help the person in that predicament, it's the same thing as if you're helping somebody in the predicament of drug addiction or some other hard thing that they didn't want to be dealing with, you know? Nobody wants it. Nobody gets married thinking, ooh, I can't wait till my divorce one day. That's going to be great. No one does that.
Right.
So do we just abandon those people who find themselves in that situation? That's not what Jesus would do. And he hung around with people who were not fantastic, like who were not like loved by everybody and approved of by everybody. So we can't be so judgmental. That's, I think, the difference. I just don't judge the people. I just take their stories at face value and I try to help come alongside wherever they are and make them know they're loved and that there's a voice in there for them. And I'm here to help them find that voice and say what they need to say to present the strongest case and get the best result for everybody. I mean, because in the end, if you can reach to a peaceful resolution at the end, that's better for both sides. If you can take away the strife, that's the lovely thing about our system is that we have a mechanism for resolving disputes that doesn't involve fighting with your fist or a duel or some crazy violent thing. We have a system, and if it's used properly, it's an effective system. And it gets people from chaos to peace. And that's my favorite part of it. You take a chaotic mess and you get people to a place where they can manage their lives peacefully with some kind of sense of normalcy again. And it's just a beautiful thing to see how people transform from the day they walk in till the day they leave. It's magnificent to see them find who they are again and like learn to stand on their own, men and women, both sides, because you can lose yourself in a marriage sometimes. And then you find that person again. It's like a reawakening almost. And they're so happy. It's really wonderful.
These are absolutely not words nor concepts usually associated with divorce. It's remarkable that
Well, it's
those.
normal to me. Like I think this is just how it is, but I guess maybe you're right. The
There you
perception
go.
is not the same.
So, Bree, if someone's not in South Georgia, if they're dealing with the breakdown of a relationship and there's an impending divorce and they are Christian and want to handle it or in that way, they want a good outcome, but it doesn't appear that one is coming. What do they do?
You mean they don't want a divorce, but they need to
Well,
do.
if one is, inevitable or at least fairly certain, and it's not going well, they want it the person in question wants it to go smoothly, but the other party doesn't, and it's starting to either become contentious or litigious, and somebody doesn't have access to you personally. What can they do to ensure a good outcome?
Well, you've got to get a lawyer first of all, because the legal minefield is impossible to maneuver in a high conflict situation without an attorney. It's a whole game to be played and a whole system of rules and language that you're not used to. And you should not try to do that as a layperson, number one, no matter where you live. And beware of the litigant who tells you from the other side, we can do this without lawyers. You don't need a lawyer. That is like number one red flag. Get one. Get an attorney. Run directly to a lawyer's office right now because that person is trying to take advantage of you. It's the truth. It's the truth. The other thing is if you're not in Georgia, most states, I believe, I know Georgia has it, have a state bar website. Like for the State Bar of Georgia, we have a website where it lists a directory of all of our members who are all attorneys practicing in the state. And we all have licenses, and it'll tell you whether we're in good standing with the state bar or not. And there are sections. So I'm a member of the family law section because I practice family law. So you can look on your state's website for the bar association and locate a member of the bar who practices in family law in your area. So normally there's a search term you can put in, like your city and the area of practice or whatever, and narrow it down from there. But find an attorney, and read my book
Boy.
because it's just my book is not legal advice, but it gives a lot of food for thought for you and your attorney to talk about. And people need to know the right questions to ask when they go to a lawyer's office, and they don't know what they don't know. So that's part of the reason for the book that I read.
Oh, fantastic. So there's prompts and conversations to have with your own attorney when you find one.
There are, and they're also at the end of each chapter, I've got questions for reflection, like personal reflection, and also like, how does this principle apply to my situation? How can I use this to assist me in promoting my best interest? That's kind of how I wrote it, was for people to be introspective and analyze things in their own context. I wish I could help everybody in every state, but there's just not enough time.
Well,
Um,
Brie, it is eye-opening to hear that you see and know that divorce dissolution can be peaceful, amicable, and done in the service of both parties and the children. It's look, you've built a better mousetrap, and it's inspiring to hear that when divorce is so prevalent today.
yeah, well, thank you. It's a mission field for sure. It's a place to meet hurting people, and that's why I love it.
Mm,
Because it's a place to meet people when they're at their lowest.
yeah.
And when they need you, they need the connection, they need a lifeline. And I try to come along and just give a hand. And I've got a great staff of paralegals who are just amazing, and they help a lot too. I mean, we are a team. It's just it's a special calling. Just like what you do. I mean, you're helping so many people get such important messaging out to the world. And you've helped me a lot too.
Oh,
Um, so
thank you, Bree. There's no question. I'm a huge fan. I went through a contentious divorce myself in the past, and had I only been in Georgia and known about you, the outcome I think would have been dramatically different. It was just the two of us involved, but it was one of the most challenging things I've ever faced. And I just wasn't blessed with the right person in my corner, and it's one of the reasons why from the first time you and I met, I've become such a fan for you and your stand for the dignity of people.
Mhm.
And whatever the reason was that 2 people got married in the first place, that continue. And
Yeah.
that's just not seen these days. And I'm a fan.
Oh, well, I'm a fan of yours.
Well, thank you. I'm
Yeah.
truly honored.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me and letting me talk about all the things I love to talk about.
Absolutely. Where can people learn more about you and the work that you do, Bree?
Well, I've got two websites. One is my law firm, sullivan-firm.com. And then I've got a book landing page, which is crusherdivorce.com. And from there, you can link to where you can buy the books that I have. I'm also on social media at Sullivan Law Firm on Facebook, and on Instagram, it's Lawyer Bree or Crusher Divorce for the books.
Fantastic. I'll make sure that all of those links are placed in the liner note of the episode.
Oh, great.
Bree, is there anything else you'd like to leave the listeners with today?
Well, maybe I would like to say a little bit about what you've done for me. Um, when I came into Magnify Your Message as a neophyte, I guess, when it comes to speaking in this forum, like with a video and a light and all the, all the things, I was all wrapped up in how it would come across and so nervous about like my messaging being just right and all these things. And what I've learned and what I think you teach people really well to do is that it's not about that. It's more about just making friendships and connections with people in media or viewing or listening or whatever. That's what life is about. And that is what your work is about. That is what my work is about. And it's been a special experience getting to know the other people in groups that we've had together. And I just think authenticity is what it's about. So when I got out of myself and stopped being all self-conscious about, ooh, how do I look? How do I sound? Do I sound like a hillbilly from South Georgia? I just boiled it down to we're all human and we're all just making friends. And when you do that, it's magical. I mean, that's when the magic happens. And when your messages get out and they help other people, that's what life is about, is connecting. And I think you do a great job of that. So thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, it truly is a delight. And it really does come down to connecting.
Yeah.
Thank you for connecting with us today, Bree.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Magnify Your Message podcast. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Bree Sullivan-Howell as much as I enjoyed making it. Tune in next week to Magnify Your Message. Find us wherever you get your podcasts, and also look out for us on YouTube. Until then, if you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, and share this episode with everyone that you feel it would benefit. Thank you in advance. And when you're ready to share your story and your work with the world, I can help. Visit CherylHunter.com to learn how. I am Cheryl Hunter, and until next time, know that your message has the power to change the world.